Epic Originals presents Nellie Nutgraf, the double best reporter in history in A Hot Story, Part 3 by Tom Angleberger. Performed by Ramon Diocampo. Chapter 8. Halfway up Mount McMadge, Nellie ran into Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was flying a kite with a key on the string. "Excuse me," she said. "Would you care to comment about the volcano?" Yes, I'd love to," said Benjamin Franklin. "I'm hoping that, when the volcano explodes, lava will strike the key and I'll discover electricity." "I thought somebody else already discovered electricity," said Nellie. "Well," said Benjamin Franklin, "perhaps I should have said." Just then, there was an explosion at the top of the volcano. A big chunk of lava, about the size of a kitchen blender, popped up in the air and made a beautiful fiery rainbow as it shot through the sky directly at Benjamin Franklin's kite. The kite burst into flames. The string started to burn, and the key melted. "Did you discover electricity?" asked Nellie. "I don't think so," said Benjamin Franklin, "but I won't be sure until after I have written a 300-page scientific book about it." Nellie asked him some more questions, and then asked to take his picture. "Sure. Just let me put on my fur hat," he said. Click. Then Benjamin Franklin rolled up his scorched string, got on a bicycle, and rode back to Maurice's buffet for a late-night snack. Nellie kept going up and, of course, wrote her latest story as she went. Franklin loses another kite. Beloved forefather says it's the 17th kite he's lost in the name of science. This time, the kite was destroyed by lava. The kite's legal owner may sue. "That healthy, wealthy weasel got up early and stole my kite and my bike," said Queen Victoria, who was chasing Benjamin Franklin on foot. Franklin loses another kite. Beloved forefather says it's the 17th kite he's lost in the name of science. This time, the kite was destroyed by lava. The kite's legal owner may sue. "That healthy, wealthy weasel got up early and stole my kite and my bike," said Queen Victoria, who was chasing Benjamin Franklin on foot. Chapter 9. Finally, at last, when it seemed like she would never get there, eventually, just before she gave up, with her last ounce of strength, Nellie got to the top of Mount McMadge and walked into little bitty Unimportantville. Except for the fact that the streets were deserted, it looked exactly like it did when she had been there for the town hall meeting. "This is an outrage!" Nellie shouted. Shouted to nobody. "It doesn't look like anything's going on here at all." Then the volcano exploded. Little bitty Unimportantville was blown into a million little bitty pieces. Mount McMadge was cracked in half. School bus loads of red-hot magma were flung into the sky. So was Nellie. She shot so high into the air she wasn't sure if she'd ever come down. Now, some folks might be scared, but Nellie was overjoyed.
"This is my lucky break!" she shouted to herself as she was hurled into the stratosphere. "The news scoop of a lifetime!"
She started typing the story while she was still going up. She just wished she had a dictionary to look up how to spell igneous rock. Or is it igneous? Or maybe idginous? By the time she was 4 miles in the air, she had stopped going up and was starting to fall back down to certain death. But she had finished her story. She pulled the paper out of her typewriter and folded it up in the shape of an airplane. She aimed carefully and threw it toward her newspaper office, 4 miles down and 252 miles away in Big City. It was a great shot. Propelled by volcanic gusts, the airplane flew over Maurice's buffet, Linda's cave, Ben Franklin's workshop, Valley Forge, the Statue of Liberty, and right into the streets of Big City. Somehow, it actually took a left turn on East 88th Street and headed straight for the office of the Big City Big News. But, at the very last second, just as the paper airplane was about to fly into her editor's open window, President Abraham Lincoln came walking out of the 88th Street pastrami shop. He had just eaten a big pastrami sandwich. He belched. The belch was so strong it knocked the airplane off course right into the office of the other big newspaper, the New York Hustle Stuff. The New York Hustle Stuff printed her article immediately and sold thousands of papers. Hot story! Up close and personal with the exploding volcano. Nellie's paper, the Big City Big News, missed the story and didn't sell a single paper that day. Their big headline was, "Medical Miracle! Boy puts Band-Aid on Big Toe." Brian, the editor, and hotshot Terbletsky blubbered like babies. But what about Nellie? Well, luckily for her, Paul Bunyan, got up early that morning to eat some giant pancakes. And even more luckily, I read the Big City Big News and the New York Hustle Stuff. I read all about how she was writing from way up in the sky and heading back to Earth at full speed. I threw down the paper and ran outside just in time to catch her in one hand and her typewriter in the other.
"Thanks,"
said Nellie.
"Now, can I ask you a few questions?"
"Sure thing," I said. "But maybe you need to read the latest issue of the Big City Big News first. Looks like you're not a reporter anymore."
"What?"
she hollered. I showed her the paper. Help wanted. Reporter needed to replace ex-reporter who blew it.
"Ex-reporter?" This is an outrage!" shouted Nellie.
I suggested she eat a giant pancake to take her mind off her troubles.
"No thanks, Paul Bunyan," she said. "What I really need is a ride back to the city. Fast."
I told her we could ride Babe the Blue Ox into town. It took Babe about 2 minutes to get us there, and Nellie asked me questions the whole way.
"Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Babe,"
she said as we dropped her off on 88th Street.
"Mind if I get a picture?"
"Sure," I said. "Just let me put on my hat." Moo! Moo! said Babe, which is ox for, "Just let me put on my hat." Click! Nellie got a picture of me and Babe waving goodbye. Then she stormed into the newspaper office. Chapter 10. Nellie was covered with soot and volcanic ash. Her best blue jeans and fanciest flannel shirt were still smoking, and her glasses were smudged with grime. But she still had her typewriter slung over one shoulder.
"Who dares to call me, Nellie Nutgraf, an ex-reporter?" "Sorry," said Brian, the editor, "but you let the New York hustle stuff get the story. You're fired." "Oh, yeah?" said Nellie, waving her notebook. "Well, maybe the New York hustle stuff will want to look at these stories, too. Exclusive interviews with Ben Franklin, Bigfoot, real name Linda, and Paul Bunyan. With photos." "Wow!" said Brian, the editor. "We've been trying to get a picture of Bigfoot for years." "Yeah," said Hotshot Terbletsky. "Ben Franklin won't even return my phone calls." Hotshot Terbletsky and Brian, the editor, whispered in each other's ears for a minute. Then Brian, the editor, said, "Oh, please, 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 please let us have those stories. You can have your job back, a pay raise, a new typewriter, and a year's supply of chicken wings from Maurice's buffet." "You can keep the chicken wings," said Nellie. "But everything else, you've got a deal." And she sat down and started typing on her new typewriter. Good catch. Gigantic but friendly lumberjack saves ex reporter's life by Nellie Nutgraf. The legendary lumberjack, Paul Bunyan, is famous for chopping down trees, but he's also good at catching things. During my free time in the forest, I learned how to juggle. I started with beanbags and worked my way up to axes, buzzsaws, and oaks," he said. Now that his famous blue ox, Babe, has learned several card tricks, they plan to start performing at birthday parties and bake sales. Yep, folks, that's the whole, honest, true story of Nellie Nutgraf, the double best reporter in history. And I haven't even told you about any of her really big stories yet. But I'm running out of room here, so I'll just save them other stories for another time. Extra, extra! Ben Franklin was a real person who did lots of stuff, but stealing Queen Victoria's bike was not one of them. He did invent things, including an improved wood stove and daylight saving time. You can read more about him in The Amazing Mr. Franklin or The Boy Who Read Everything by Ruth Ashby. Giant lumberjack Paul Bunyan may have been inspired by a real lumberjack. Or maybe people only made up stories about him and Babe, his blue ox. There are many books about him on Epic, including Paul Bunyan, Classics Illustrated Jr. by W.B. Loghead and Mike Sikowski. So you can read more and decide for yourself. This is Ramon Diocampo. We hope you have enjoyed this unabridged production of Nellie Nutgraf, the double best reporter in history, in A Hot Story, Part 3, by Tom Angleberger. This program was produced by Dion Audio Services. Text copyright 2018 by Tom Angleberger. Production copyright 2018 by Epic Creations, Inc. All rights reserved. Thank you for listening.